Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Feldenkrais Move Better, Feel Better Summit. My name is Lavinia Plonka, and I'm the co host for the series. And I'm happy to be the host for the track that we're calling Language Runs Deep. Language is such an important part of being able to communicate movement. And I'm really honored to be able to meet someone who's at the forefront of using language and movement and emotion all together in a very different way than we do in Feldenkrais lessons. And yet, in so many ways, her work resonates and is sympathetic to our work. Bernadette Pleasant is an emotion. She's the director of the Emotional Institute. She's created a training program called FEM. She calls herself a fiery sensual teacher. I can't wait to ask what that means. And she has certifications in so many different somatic modalities, including one that's called sensual movement, which we're going to find out about as well. And Bernadette is going to be joined for part of the interview with her accompanist, Babadan. So when you see him pop in, you'll get to learn a little bit about how he participates in helping Bernadette facilitate her different experiences. So, Bernadette, welcome to the summit. I am so excited to have a chance to speak with you in this way. And you are muted.
I'm muted. How about that? There we go. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.
So, tell me what you mean by being fiery and sensual. Because somehow when I think of sensuality, I think of it as warm or soft. And once it gets into fire, I've gone beyond sensual into something else. So, since we're working with language, I just thought I'd throw that out there for starters.
I love that. Thank you so much. And the question, I think fiery and sensual can be many things. There's certainly some heat there, and so whether that's just a warm, gentle feel, or whether I'm giving myself complete permission to allow that heat to stir up and rise in me, to moving gently and softly, or moving with more expression in my body and more acceptance of the emotion that is present for me. That's what I mean by fiery and sensual. Just the rightness of it all, the acceptance of it all, and the lack of toning that down, but realizing that that's where the life is for me. That's what I am deeply dedicated to, not only for my own life and seeing how that just feels better, but it's also a way that I like to put myself out there and show as a living example of what fire can look like in all of its shades, if you will.
Right. So, working in a very elemental way.
Mhm.
You said something that I think is very helpful from the Feldenkrais perspective. You used the words permission and allow. And you also spoke a lot about slowness, which, of course, in Feldenkrais lessons, we move slowly. But we talk about our work often as using the language of permission, that we have permission to experience ourselves, to fail, to try things. Can you talk a little bit about how you use permission when you're asking people to express themselves in your movement classes, in your workshops?
By all means. The very fact that the inspiration for my creating my various bodies of work, especially as it pertains to movement, was because of my inability to to be expressive. I didn't that permission was taken away from me in a way.
Mhm.
Uh, I was due to religious beliefs and ways of growing up, it was don't move that way.
Mm.
Don't speak too loud. Don't bring too much attention to yourself. Don't be too much. And all of those things just, yeah, before I labeled myself fiery and sensual, I was very much that. So I watched myself sort of start to move less. That freedom of movement and sound and enjoyment needed to fit into a narrow margin of what was acceptable, and therefore my expression became less to make others feel more for them to feel more comfortable. But it came at a great cost for me. So that permission was it was something I needed to take back and to let go of any belief systems that were not my own so that my body could move in a way that felt nourishing and nurturing and just felt good. And I wanted to be able to do that without the thoughts, the little like little mosquito thoughts of that's too much. Good girls don't do that. Um, there were many reasons, but those were the things that were shutting down the agency I had over my body until I decided this really isn't feeling good to me. I need to do something different.
So you're saying some very important things, right? Because so many people grow up with these kind of restrictions or attitudes towards free expression, whether it's free expression through sensual movement or just being able to speak one's mind, to be able to be, to live large in essence. So maybe tell us a little bit about your background. How did you discover this possibility? How did that evolve? I mean, did you take ballet, or were you an office worker and suddenly you went dancing down the hall? How did it happen? How did you shift?
It was very organic for me, quite honestly. No to ballet, no to uh, any any formal training of movement. It was just something I enjoyed doing. I'm sure I was dancing in the womb, and it just feels really good to me. So as a child, I did this, and I did it everywhere. I mean, if there was music playing in my head or out loud, there was something I wanted to move and dance to. I remember as a child watching um, dancers that pretty much anyone who I could connect to when I saw something pouring from them that looked like vibrance. And I remember just sitting and I would cry watching it because it would
Mm,
move me to tears. I so enjoyed seeing that. And I think when you're attracted to something like that, that's because it lives in you. And so I saw this and I wanted that. And I would imagine myself just it didn't need to be formal for me. It needed to happen. And and so I did this. And I like I said, I danced everywhere. I went to all kinds of music. And at a certain point, my household became very restricted as a result of religion. And it wasn't from birth, but it came about later in my early teens, and um, actually around about 11 years old. And things just sort of became tight and narrow. And there was a shaming that would come from just a glance or from word, not to do this, not to do that, not to move in this way. And this was just my own enjoyment. This was, and so I found myself not only not doing that, but not questioning why,
mm.
and feeling like there was something I was doing that was wrong, when in fact it was just what came naturally. And I started to notice how rigid I became in my body, and in hindsight I could see that it was also in my curiosity became very sort of narrow. My ability to imagine and dream was just sort of the. I started to believe that there were things I could not do. And not only did that affect the way I thought, it was the way I moved as
Mm,
well. I felt like I was starting to live a life that was girdled, that was tightly constricted into what was right and wrong.
mhm,
And I was a child, so these were not, I didn't rebuke this, or I didn't speak up against it. I followed along and it didn't feel good. And I looked forward. I remember in my early 20s, I just thought, I don't want to do this. I really don't want to do this. And I used to go to this club in Newark, New Jersey, and I would go every Wednesday night. And there was something about me at that club. I found this kind of freedom.
mm,
And I realized it was those live drums that they played. They played congas.
mhm.
And many people say, "Oh, you got lost in it." I'm like, no, I think I got found in it. Yeah. And I noticed what would happen when I was doing this movement every Wednesday night there at the club, that I left feeling expansive. Things, everyday worries they were still there. I was different. So it was this movement as medicine and what I could experience with these drums. So I started to get curious about that. And how could I have more of this and more? And then I started to notice other people, and I would find myself looking at them thinking they need to move to some drums, because I would like to take them with me on Wednesday nights. And I started to get very curious and understanding what it was that was happening for me. And that was really what inspired it, the movement. It was noticing how good I felt and how I hadn't felt that in so long. That is what started my journey of building this body of
That's so interesting. This idea, we talk in our work about i- i- increasing limitations, how life, our perceptions of life create or make our world smaller and smaller and smaller. And Feldenkrais talked about it as perceived limitations, that I live in this limited world because I believe it's limited. He said the only things that are impossible are the ones that you believe are so, right? So something happens though where suddenly I buy into it. I buy into the shame, or I buy into the perception that I'm not allowed to do this, and it takes some kind of a metanoic moment to wake up and realize that there's something that needs to speak to me. What I thought was really interesting about what you said, which I've never thought about, was that you said you couldn't even begin to imagine another, a life of freedom or whatever. And that, we talk a lot in our work about imagining, imagining a movement instead of just doing it, imagining and visualizing how it's going to take place in order to be able to do it even better. But I've never thought about the fact, and he used to say, if you haven't done the movement, you can't really imagine it. And but I'd never thought about it from a psychological perspective, where if your life has become limited, you can't imagine another life. So that is a beautiful point. So when you experienced this language of the drums, because we know that in many cultures the drums literally were a language, that somehow it tied into some kind of inner rhythm of your own, right? And you developed a relationship. So then, you I mean, you didn't just start going out and teaching people to dance to drums. It looks like you did a lot of studying. So how did you begin to integrate all the idea of healing and grief work and all that with this experience of the drums?
Well, what I noticed for me personally, and that's one of the things that's always been the case of whatever has been created, that anything I've had my hand in is because it worked for me. It's I found something in it, and so creations tend to come for me from the inside out. I was very aware that I would go to many clubs, and I was a newly divorced person getting my life back, and I was out dancing a lot at different places, and I, but there was something about this place. The other places played music, but this was different. This was live,
Hmm.
and what I found was happening, and at the time I didn't know it. Um, and it's just as well I didn't. But what was happening is the drums, of course, because they are these live hands and hearts that are playing them, and this bringing this healing instrument into this work, this live skin, I felt seen and completely heard in terms of what was going on internally. I could express emotions that I wouldn't even think to speak of because, well, there weren't many places then where people could be so free.
Mm.
And so to say that I am experiencing heartache and grief and that or I'm feeling angry or confident, whatever it was, to the inability to I could do that with these drums. I found something about them beckoning what was in me. This was talk about there's some kind of duality that happens. Not only is my nervous system relaxed, perhaps because it's the first sound I've ever heard, is that drum. It's the first sound we all ever heard. So something in me relaxes.
Mm.
And at the same time, it reaches in and pulls out more. And it just gives me the space to move within. And because I was doing it in in a crowded place, I was there was a witnessing that was happening, which is healing happens by being witnessed. So here all these things were coming together, and all I knew is every Wednesday night I needed to go back. All I knew is Thursday was better than Tuesday because of Wednesday night, and that thing. I really began to study about the drums and its impact on the brain, our brains and nervous systems, and this made sense. And I thought, wow, one of my biggest um, challenges was an inability to be expressive emotionally. And that wasn't just in terms of emotions that um, people think of, like anger and grief. These were joy. I I can recall wanting to monitor my laughter so it wasn't too loud
Mm.
or didn't make others who weren't happy feel uncomfortable. So this was happening even in joy. So there was no place that emotions could really just be. And I found with those drums, I wanted to create something, some arena where we got to exercise the muscle of emotions, to be expressive, to use not only our body, but to use the sound of that drum to help us exercise this thing. And so that's how I created the body of work. And I did quite a bit of study on learning the order of what's called the emotional tour, something I've created that is embedded into the film experience. And that's where we move and sound and uh, various emotions. People who are shut down or want more joie de vivre, that tends to be who is looking forward to this safe space to come and play.
So I have some questions about the drums and the brain, but as you were speaking, I became super intrigued about this idea of uh, the emotions coming through sound and movement, and how you give them an emotional tour. And I mean, would it be inappropriate to ask for a little example
Not at
of
all.
how maybe just a little bit to see how the drums speak to your body, to your emotions? Would that be okay?
I would love to share that. And I'm going to invite Baba Don in. Um, Baba Don is my co-teacher. We play together. We do this thing together, and I love to hear the sound that he pours into the room. Um, the emotional tour. Kind of wait for your rhythm to settle in. What happens often is I'm waiting to ground into my body, which is what I teach all teachers in my training. Wait till your body settles. I want to explain what the emotional tour is. It's called an emotional tour because we're stuck in no one destination. And I'm going to be your tour guide. Whether you are able to move the emotion or you just hear what's coming from Baba Don's sound, you will, the healing happens, whether it's just auditory or actual movement. The emotional tour, we're going to just start to all imagine, if you can, if you will, we're going to take the tour through the body. I want you to ground into your feet, pressing the soles of your feet into the earth, maybe spreading your toes. Imagine we're all standing around in a circle. It is with a cauldron, a giant bowl in the middle. I want you to dance your way up to the bowl and take a look around at everyone in attendance here. I invite you to start to move your fingers towards that cauldron, just hovering above. In that bowl, in that pool, just here, our first tour stop. It is filled and brimming with joy. Joy. I want you to start to allow your fingers to move as if they were moving in joy. Allow your fingers to play and splash. What color is joy for you? For me, it's a screaming yellow. Give joy a color, whatever it is for you. And I invite you to start to splash in that joy and move it up to your elbows, upper arm bones and shoulders. Allow joy to fill your heart. I'm going to get out of my chair, but you're welcome to please. Allow joy to fill your belly. Joy now moves in your legs and feet. Allow joy to fill your spine from base. Now to with your head and neck as you move joy through your entire body. Joy fill your face. For the next 10 seconds, I invite you to paint the room the color that was in the bowl. So your body, your sound, and your entire being express joy. Go. Notice what's happening in your body, what you're feeling. For me, I'm feeling an effervescent feeling in my body. The color of yellow fills my entire being. Allow yourself to place a hand where you feel joy. For me, it's in my heart. Right or wrong to this person. is your birthright, and may you always sound, feel, and be able to access this joy. The next stop on the emotional tour, just hear the word. Just hear the words and the sounds. The next stop on the emotional tour is grief. Notice where you feel it in your body. Allow a hand to go there. For me, it's in my left shoulder right now. Give grief a color. For me, it's a murky brown. There's no right or wrong color. They're just our attention on the emotion thing I see. Notice its texture. How does it want to move or sound? Grief is love with nowhere to go. My invitation to you is to feel grief, be able to move through grief, to acknowledge its existence, and to gently cradle it and ask grief, how long does it need? Treat grief like a sleeping, beautiful baby. Don't rush it. Give it all the gentleness and care that it needs. And know that it is not a final destination. It is my desire that we treat the emotions that rise up in us like weather. Notice a weather pattern and you make adjustments accordingly, just like you would if it were snowing or raining or sunshine. No judgment, just acceptance. After some emotions, I am going to invite you to shake. So for now, if you can work a shake through your body, allowing the shake. Maybe now. From this emotion, next emotional tour stop, and that would be anger. Just noticing if you feel that emotion, not judging it. Knowing that anger comes from an injustice. I'm certainly not one to promote road rage. I'm talking about when something needs to be righted, and we need to have a voice around it, being able to move what that feeling is like in our bodies, to acknowledge it. You'll shake after moving and sounding this. The next emotional tour stop is desires. I've noticed that if you move some grief and anger, you can get to desire. And desire is about wanting, desiring the things you want, the place you want to live, the food you want to eat, the way you want your lover to touch you, whatever it is, whatever you desire, just being full on and moving in that space, accepting it. We don't shake off that emotion. We move on to confidence. Noticing how your body moves in confidence, how it has a different gaze, the eyes, how very different it is from grief, joy even. Confidence moves you around the room, and it is my desire that we always feel it, that we can access it by practicing confidence. The last stop on the emotional tour, we take much more time in these spaces in class, but in the last stop is flirt. And while flirt is not an emotion, it certainly causes you to feel a certain way. And flirting isn't about wanting something from another. Flirting is being so right with yourself, with your grief, your joy, your anger, no judging around your desires, that you actually get to have some fun. The flirting is being so full of you that it just seeps out of your pores. You can flirt with things animate and inanimate. It's about having fun, having a full life, moving and expressing in a way that is healthy, that looks and feels good, in a way that heals not only yourself, but anyone looking on. Many people will say, I want some of that, and I want them to come get it. Thank you, Lavinia. Thank you, Baba Don. So that's a little bit of what an emotional tour looks like.
Wow. So it's so interesting to me to, first of all, my color, by the way, was magenta.
Love that.
And it was just sort of like, well, where's that coming from? So that was really fun.
Yeah.
Um, but it's interesting what we choose to call emotions and what are emotions versus actions. Like
Mhm.
you said, flirting is an action, but it combines different emotions in it.
Indeed.
In order to look like you're flirting, you have to have a little bit of sensuality, you have to have a little bit of joy, you have to have a little bit of maybe even slyness or something going on.
And
and
confidence.
and confidence. And it's interesting what you said about confidence, because when we teach people in Feldenkrais, the idea is that in the process of learning to understand how you are and how you move through life, that you learn to, as we put it, love yourself more. And that process of loving myself allows me to move through life with a quality of confidence.
Indeed.
And so the question that comes up for me here is, can a person be confident but not be able to dance? I hate to bring that question up, but it's just all of a sudden I was like, do we have to have the ability to feel a rhythm and dance in order to feel confident? Because I'm sure you've met people who are just absolutely wonderfully confident people, but the minute they get on the dance floor, it's like, "Ugh," they
That.
don't have it. So what is that? What is that magic moment?
Well, I think, first of all, yes. And I tend to use the word movement rather than dance, because I find that if I don't teach dance, I teach freedom of movement
Hmm.
and freedom of expression. I don't care where someone's left foot lands. I really don't. I care that wherever it lands, it's a place that feels good to them.
Hmm.
And as long as it does that, I think the can't dance thing comes from some belief system that it has to look a certain way.
Hmm.
And I feel that if someone wants to just walk around class, moving those emotions as they walk or march, whatever feels good to them, as they roll around on the floor, great. For me, it's not about placement of anything. It's about going inward and moving or sounding what that is for them. So I think it's a belief system that someone has bought into if they believe they can't.
So how do you, with your workshops, create an environment for people who have been repressed, who have been shamed, who feel awkward in their bodies, who don't know what's the right way? They think that there should be a right way and they're waiting for the example, for the teacher. I mean, the way you use language is very evocative and very beautiful, but how do you set the stage so that everyone that appears in your environment feels safe through your use of language and movement to be able to express themselves without feeling geeky and for lack of a better word, really white.
Sure. No, I totally get that. And I welcome all parts of them. I welcome all parts of them. It is important to me to always set the stage for you are welcome here. And I tell people right at the beginning of class, if you came for our dance class, you're at the wrong place. You're at the wrong place. It's not what I do. I
Mhm.
want freedom of movement. Actually, dancers, I because whether I'm not classically trained, however, I am an amazing dancer. However, I I know when dancers have a way of making it look good. A dancer can make emotion look like they're really having an experience. I can see through that. I'd rather somebody who's just more awkward or whatever, having a very authentic experience. That's what to me is the most beautiful thing. I don't care where things land. This is because this is release work, so it's not it. The dance doesn't matter. I'm not even watching for that. If anything, it tends to cover what's really there.
So
So
when you speak about release work, um, do you ever have situations where people are in a class and something occurs, a trauma release or anything like that?
absolutely, absolutely.
And
Uh,
how do you deal with that?
Patiently, very patiently, and I allow the drums to move with them. I encourage them to move. I encourage them to make sound. There's that happens often. The emotional tour is put together in a order that takes care of people energetically. There's a reason why there's certain emotions not in there, and this was carefully orchestrated so as to help. However, whenever you're asking someone to experience or to acknowledge grief, someplace they'd rather avoid. The thing is, you can't avoid it. So to be able to just acknowledge this, that's all we're doing. And I'm careful to stay in my lane. Acknowledge the grief. Where do you feel it in your body? What sound or movement does it want to make? Many people think if they go there, if they start crying, they'll never stop. I remember a woman stepping into the class once, and she said that from Asian descent, she said that in her culture, the show of emotion was not something um, that was you know acceptable. And she said that when she was 6, her father died, and she burst into tears, and she said her mother told her to suck it up. Since 6 years old, she'd been telling herself whenever she wanted to cry to suck it up. So I think there's so many reasons why people are in. But she was saying in class, so sorry, she was saying in class, just during that emotional tour stop, she felt like she grieved her father, and how refreshing it felt on the other side.
Mhm.
Grief is when grief is approached with compassion, it is something that you might look at, you might peek at, you might sniff it. It doesn't matter how long. There's no measure whether you moved an inch or a mile. It's all celebrated, and I think that's really what's important. uh, Making certain that there is the group. I always say that this is a judgment-free zone, which means you can't judge yourself. That's where judge. If you don't judge yourself, no one else can. So I want that. I need to make that container as safe as possible, and that makes. I think that's why there's so much um, healing work that happens there. I get beautiful responses and letters, and how people just felt like they left something on the dance floor. They didn't. They that the healing drum seems to help so much, and it does.
I love that term, judgment-free zone. That's great. I may have to steal that from you, Bernadette.
Please do. Yeah, I want more judgment-free zones around
That's
the world.
right. Exactly. Exactly. So you brought up the drums again, and so I want to circle back to that question I had because you said that there's research or information about the relationship of the rhythm of drums to our brain. Can you kind of expound on that a little bit for us?
Yeah, our brains have a way of we want to concentrate. We put our minds on things, and so um, there's a relaxing that happens with that nonverbal part of our brains that gets to get spoken to, and in that space, that's where really authentic movement can happen. I always go back, and we didn't do it now, but we do a large part of the class where we are just playing the heartbeat and having people do that all over their body and their space, literally, that they are standing in. Um, it soothes and it relaxes the nervous system.
Are you saying that they are touching themselves?
Literally, they'll
Mm-hmm.
Baba will play the sound heartbeat, and they'll just receive that sound for a while, and then I invite them to put their hands on the body. And this is really just, it's so comforting and relaxing, and all they're doing is patting out heartbeat and but moving that around the body. And once they've moved it around the body, to start to move it around the air around you. And it's
Mm-hmm.
really just cocooning and creating your own safe space. I'm safe in my body. I can create safety around me. And this is how important it is, because we all need to feel safe so that we can move about and grow freely and be expressive. That drum is really an integral part of the work.
So when I totally get about the heartbeat. I mean, that influences everything. It influences our language. I remember I don't I don't know if you know who Kristen Linklater was. She was a great voice teacher, and she once said that what is it? Iambic pentameter, you know, the
Oh yeah.
language of Shakespeare is the rhythm of the heartbeat, that it's going I am, I am, I am, I am. So I'm feeling that even in when my speech flows, I can feel that heartbeat. So, but then when the rhythms become more complex, like the way that Baba Don was playing different rhythms, how does that influence sort of my process? Is it physical, then emotional, then mental? Is everything happening at once?
It's well, it is emotional, physical, and then the mental comes in, but it is the emotion, the he is playing the emotion. He has to
Mhm,
feel the emotion to play it.
mhm,
And there are no two classes that are alike, because he's not the same every time. And
mhm.
that's another thing that I love about the drum. Um, and healers that play it. So it is what he is sensing and feeling in the classroom. He also plays to um, other movers. So if someone presents themselves, it's he has a beautiful way of not playing the beat for them to dance to, but to allow their movement to influence his drum beat. So the drum isn't leading the movement. This is allowing one's own body to tell the story, and then the drum is working around that.
Mhm.
Yeah, the drum is actually uh, ushering through what needs to move in you, versus saying we're going to do it this way.
Do you always, in your facilitation of these things, are you always using language and drum, or is it sometimes that it's just the drum?
Sometimes it is just a drum. It depends on what portion of class we're in. There'll be periods where people are just allowing the drums. I There's an exercise we do sometimes that is just allow the drum to fill you. It's to allow yourself to get so full with the sound that you are organically moving to what feels good to you. I also invite people to dance, move, and to the beat, under the beat, over the beat, whatever feels good to them. Constant permission to how I feel like it's like a Montessori method of movement. It's like whatever, wherever you are is perfect. There is no right or wrong way to do this. Because who am I to say what your joy looks like? Um, I've seen people really expressive and confidence and just you're erect and moving and focused, and then someone else who's just standing there with their eyes closed and but their body is just telling in a complete story of full on confidence. It People do it their own way, and there's constant permission to do that.
Can you talk a little bit about your training program? You have something called the FEM, right?
Fem is the 90-minute experience that the
Oh,
emotional tour is embedded in.
okay.
I call that Fem because I feel that there's a need to rebirth oneself to be able to come. Toddlers are very expressive. Young children are extremely expressive. They are learned, taught to not do. They're shush. They're just so I feel that there's a need to come back to this expression, and birthing happens through the feminine. So the fem is the 90-minute experience, and I, to date, we now have over 100 teachers that have trained around the world to do this experience, and it's a 3 day, 3 full days of training, and then we continue the work after that. But I've moved that training to virtual, and it's beautiful work. I love it.
So basically people take this training and then they facilitate this 90-minute experience. Is that
That's
how it works? I
that's cool.
see.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
Wow. That's nice.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
and
it's good, and it's challenging because I get to people come because they want to spread this. They usually have taken a class and they'll ask, how can I do this? And so a few times a year I offer the teacher training.
so I know that you wanted to talk about and this is such a huge subject, and so I've kind of been holding off because I don't want it to be treated lightly, and yet I still feel we want to bring it up because you wanted to talk about the power of sound and movement to heal racial tension, to somehow help us come together. And I don't know if you can speak about that in a way that would be satisfactory in a short amount of time, but if there is something that you would love you could share with us, even if you want to do it with more drumming and movement, or if you just want to speak about it, I would love to hear your views.
Yeah, I'll speak about it. Thanks so much. I think it's really important, and I'm going to do my best to sum it up. But here's this is why that is so important to me. Shortly after George Floyd's murder, I received many phone calls from friends of mine, white friends, who were just like, "What can I do? What can I do?" I could hear so much in their voice and see so much in their bodies. Like, I need to get educated. Is there a course I should take? And what can I do? And it was so sincere. But what I was noticing is their bodies were tight.
Mhm,
What can I do? And in this state, you can't do much.
mhm.
That's just it. That's the truth of the matter. We didn't just get here. It's been a very long time. So you can't go at racism like this because it's so deeply embedded. And so what needs to happen, in my opinion, is arenas where that body gets to relax.
Mhm.
That body gets to relax. We need to take notice of what's happening in the body. Okay, in this state, I can't learn. I can't listen. It's like fight or flight and trying to make a really big decision. And so what I did was, and I'm so grateful for Resma Manikin's book, My Grandmother's Hands, because that to me just nailed it. In that it was a book on unlearning racism, and it involved this body, because so often racism isn't words that were specifically said, but it was noticing like a mother's bristle if she's around certain people. Children start to take that in. Imagine being pregnant and carrying a child, and there are times when you're relaxed and just at ease, and there are other times when you're uptight. And so there is a body. We are learning racism through the body, and it needs to, in addition to taking in information and desiring to do better, I think it does not work if we don't bring the body into it. How do we relax this body? How do we continue to come together? And in wanting to suggest a place where this could happen, I didn't have any. I knew of many programs, but I didn't none that really addressed the body. And so I did what I do these days. I created one. I created 400 years unlearning racism through the body, deep listening, and storytelling. And I invited people to come to the table. Let's sit at the table together and share in a way that is not only healing for people of color, but is also people who came to learn this got what they needed. And we use that book, My Grandmother's Hand, to read in community in the program. But my point is, the body can't be left out of these things. We don't learn only by taking in information. It is just noticing what's happening in our bodies.
Mhm.
And I think when we start to deal with very a weighty issue like racism, I think the way we really can come to some kind of better future is by being holistic in our approach to it, which
Mm,
includes the body.
mm. So I love what you said, because it reminds all of us that every emotion, every thought, every attitude is contained in your body. It's not out there. And a way to access transformation is through listening to the body. So, yeah, thank you for that.
Sure.
Well, it's been great speaking to you. I don't know, is there anything else that you feel you would like to share with this audience, this Feldenkrais related audience that's exploring and learning about your movement for the first time?
It is it's a pleasure to be here, and I I tend to go towards the tough topics because I think, like grief, and I'm doing work that I'm so proud of along with Sarah Nix, on grief, which I think these days there's so much of it.
Mhm,
The mere fact that we're masked, and have to be,
mhm,
and living in a state of fear. I am trying to find a new normal in that. And anytime we're looking at a new normal, there's been change or loss or disappointment, and that's creating grief. So I'm so grateful for spaces like this where people are looking at the body and what's available to it, how to feed our minds and bodies, and to move more confidently in the world. So I I love the opportunity to come here and share about FEM, the Emotional Institute, and grief work. I look forward to just following the summit because I'm a fan.
Oh, well, good. And your website, if people want to know more about you, how can they find you?
at theemotionalinstitute.com.
Okay. So that's good, because people might be running around going, Bernadette, where are you? Theemotionalinstitute.com. Great. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. It has really been a pleasure and an education. And I'm looking forward to doing some movement myself after this.
Oh, wonderful. Thanks for having me.